So it really depends on the industry. But in the world of B2B SaaS, Carlos, the way these companies ship, it's like things are always changing. And especially when you have a complex platform product, you're bound to have change like literally every day.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's hot topic: can AI really help you sell? I mean, let's face it, beyond the simple better messaging or helping you do research on a company, can it really help you become a better sales professional? And to help us out with that, we got Sai. And Sai, I'm going to let you say your whole name.
I go by Sriharsha, Carlos. That's my full name.
And it's Guduguntla for your last name.
Exactly.
I had him do it because I've been messing it up all day long. So I figured it'd be simpler. He's the co-founder and CEO at Hyperbound AI. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Carlos. Big fan of your work, and it feels like a dream to be finally coming on.
So when we talked ahead of time, let's set the stage for our audience. There seems to be a million tools. Everybody and their mother calls their product AI something. And when we really think about helping people drive sales, can AI really help you be more effective?
Yeah, we're diving right into it. I think that's a multifaceted question, Carlos. Right? When you think about the landscape of tools that are out there, there's, like you mentioned, right? AI helping with research, AI helping with email, right? AI just straight up writing all your emails, right? We've also seen AI, sorting through, a ton of data and trying to find insights from it. So there's all kinds of use cases for AI. But for the longest time, Carlos, I think people were always dreaming for something like what we're doing at Hyperbound. The technology was just not possible. Like the AI was just not quite there. And I think it really was a technological shift in the last year and a half that's now enabling AI to actually help you sell day to day, not just like from the perspective of like prepping for a call or doing a postmortem, but actually practicing your skills, sharpening them to make sure you're as prepared for every call as you can possibly be.
I think it's a great point. In fact, as I talk to different people, the tagline I see multiple people use these days, including myself, is it's not that AI is coming for your job tomorrow, but people using AI are coming for your job tomorrow because they're going to be more productive and more effective at it. And when you look at taking some of the, day to day, sending, pushing out emails, anybody could do that. Yep. If that's all you were doing before and you called yourself a sales professional, you're probably going to get replaced because that's pretty easy to replace. But it's the human-to-human connection that's hard to replace. And how do you get better at having that conversation, being able to listen to their answers and react, being able to be relatable, not only to the admin and administrator and system administrator, but also to that VP or senior executive or CEO or CTO of an organization. And to do that effectively, especially for young professionals, you really need practice. And that sounds like what Hyper AI is really trying to help you with. Did I say that all right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on point, Carlos. And I think what a lot of people overlook from what I've seen in the market is we have a new generation of sellers entering the market, right? These sellers, they're in their mid 20s, early 20s, right? And I always say this, they grew up in the iPhone generation. and candidly, I'm part of that generation as well, right? And what I mean by that is we grew up texting more than calling, right? It's easier to get an emotion across using an emoji rather than actually showing it to someone in real life, right? It's easier to just make a phone call or get on a Zoom call than meet this person at a restaurant and just have a nice dinner or a nice coffee, right? And so it's like a lot of the salespeople that are coming into the industry today, they need a lot of hand-holding to be able to be reminded of what it's like to actually build an in-person relationship, to actually, be face-to-face with a human being. And it sounds so basic, but yet it's actually one of the biggest issues that we hear from these sales leaders every single day, because they remember back in the day when they were reps themselves, things were completely different. right? COVID wasn't a thing, right? Because of COVID, now every team is remote, right? And so it's like, how do I keep that relationship based sale going, and how do I teach these reps how to be strong face to face communicators? And then especially the way these companies have grown in the last couple of years, it's not even scalable to do it the way people are doing it today. So
Fair enough. Well, how did you guys come around creating a company around this particular use case or problem?
yeah, no, that's a great question, man. It's a lot of the products that I've built, my co-founder and I, throughout our career, they've all been out of necessity for ourselves in a way. And this product is very similar. So what actually happened was, initially my co-founder and I, we started this in June 2023. At the time, we were actually building a completely different product, and we had to learn how to sell that. And we would go into these discovery calls with executives, and we had no idea how to run discovery. We had no idea how to run a proper demo, right? And then even worse, we get to a negotiation, we would just fold like a lawn chair every time we got there, right? And so when you're in the early days, you only have a few shots, right? You get a few at bats, and so what we did in classic technical founder fashion is we went and built software to help us actually train and upskill ourselves. And at the time, it was a very bare bones product. Like, it was living on my co-founder's computer. We would just go back and forth with some objections with this bot, and it would tell us how we did, but we didn't really think much of it. And we did that for 6 months, really improved at our sales skills. We had a sales coach at the time too that was training us along with that. And we were at a conference in New York, 6 months into selling that product. And a bunch of, one of the CROs at a roundtable turned to my co-founder, and he was like, you guys are engineers, and you spent the last 3 to 4 months, and you were able to go from 0 to 250K in ARR for this product that you've been building. How'd you guys get so good at sales? Right. And we're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it takes one of my own reps literally 3 to 4 months to get to their first sale. You guys managed to close multiple customers in a matter of a couple months. Right. And so we were like, well, we have this thing we practice with, not a big deal. Right. It's just this AI we go back and forth with. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, can I see that? And so we booked a couple of coffee chats with these CROs throughout the week, and we demoed what we had, and they were just mind blown. Right. Like, my co-founder and I, we're builders. We've been building for a decade. Nothing ever blew someone's mind like this product did. And every CRO we met said the same thing. They were like, why aren't you selling that? Right. And after we heard that enough, we were like, we got to make a pivot. And it was a hard pivot into, selling this product. And as soon as we launched it, January 2024, it went viral. So the rest has been history.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. I think that's the old saying, and I do think you're onto something because it's my as you know, my day job is coaching and sales training, and I like to relate it back to sports. And for people that aren't into sports, like, okay, music. Think about your favorite musician, athlete. What do the top do that the rest don't, or what do the top do that the rest don't do enough of?
Yeah.
And you look at all the top players or even the top musicians, they don't just show up,
Yeah.
they actually practice.
They practice.
And so I encourage them on certain behaviors, and I do try to practice with them while I'm with them. But the reality is they got to take it on their own. They got to go to the gym and go make the free
Right.
throws or take the shots, right?
Right.
I can't do that for them. Or their managers are hopefully being better coaches for them.
Right.
And so at the core, I see the problem clearly. In fact, to make it a little worse, I think, the last 10, 20 years have been pretty good years economically. And it's allowed mediocre behavior to excel. Growth at all costs, money being cheap. Woohoo!
Yep.
I'm a great salesman. As soon as money got expensive, decisions fell under more scrutiny, people really wanted to know the value, the impact of what they were buying. All of a sudden, a lot of salespeople are having trouble selling. And
Absolutely.
tools like yours, can it help them have that value conversation better?
Right. And we talk about this all the time, right? over the last 5 years or so, we've gone down this rabbit hole of quantity, quantity, quantity. Let's send out more emails, let's hire more reps, let's just hire 100 SDRs, and we'll have all the pipeline in the world, right? Let's just make a couple more calls, that will get us more, that will double our pipeline. It's like these things that did work actually 2 3 years ago, they don't work anymore, right? In fact, emails are at like an all-time low in terms of conversions right now,
Right.
right? And everyone's jumping back on the phone, and you have all these 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds that have never made a phone call in their lives to an executive, right now being expected to call up a CISO or a CTO and have a very educated conversation and sound confident of all things, right? Confidence is the big thing, right? And most of these people don't have that experience to feel that confidence. And I really like your sports analogy as well, Carlos, because when you think about any high skilled job, and let's just take the athlete example, right? They spend nearly 80% of their time in practice, right? They spend more time in practice than in the game. And you look at people like Steph Curry; he's the greatest shooter in the world, and in history, some would argue, right? And yet he still shoots free throws every single day, right? And so, and I see sales as a very high skilled role as well. The gap between the best salespeople and the middle of the pack is huge,
It
right?
is.
And so it's like, how can
It's only
we
getting bigger, is what research shows.
exactly? And it's all about like, how can we bridge that gap and allow the middle of the pack to actually make their way up to that top performer status, right? And we that's the entire mission of Hyperbound from day one.
All right. So in the product, are they practicing cold calls? Are they practicing discovery?
Sure.
What scenarios can they practice?
Yeah, so we actually started out with cold calls, and there was a reason for that. Like I mentioned, because email conversion rates were down, we heard that everyone's jumping back on the phones over and over and over again, and everyone was struggling to build up a cold call culture, right? And part of that is just not having enough at bats, because even if you make 1,000 phone calls, if your connect rate is 4%, you're barely getting actual conversations to practice, right? So
Right.
that's where we started, cold calls, and that's what allowed us to go as viral as we have in the last year. But then about 3 to 4 months in, we actually expanded the platform pretty rapidly. Now we have every type of sales call you can imagine, including even post sales. So we do cold calls, discovery, right? We do negotiations, we do demos as well. We do upsells, renewals, cross sells. If you're just checking in with a customer, like you're a CSM that just wants to check in, we have calls for that, right? So anything you can imagine in the revenue org that's customer facing, we can simulate. And interestingly enough, we actually just introduced a new one too. We call it the leadership development pack. So the idea is your managers can practice coaching a rep, where the AI pretends to be the rep, and your manager can practice coaching the rep on a skill. Because over and over again, what we've heard from a lot of coaches, enablement leaders, is that managers, significant number of managers, don't know how to coach, right? So how can we upskill them as well so that they can do a better job of coaching their own reps? And
I think it's. I mean, I go back to this thing about the market's been at a frenzy other than the last couple of years, and a lot of these frontline and second line managers grew up
yeah,
in that, and now we're asking them to be better coaches of those reps. Well, they're not that good at it to begin with. So I think you did
right,
hit the nail on the head. It's not just coaching the reps; it's even coaching the managers to be better managers, right? To
right,
be better coaches of their people.
right. But we have noticed though a pattern, right? Typically the managers that struggle the most are, it's not always entirely their fault, is what we found, right? Sometimes there's just sales orgs where you have your sixth line manager, your fifth line manager, your fourth line manager, and by the time information from the top gets to the first line manager, it's all garbled, right? And it's like the game of telephone, right? When the CRO has a decree, he's like, okay, we need to change up this messaging on X product, goes to the first manager, and then it goes to the next. And by the time it gets to the bottom, it's just like, well, what are we actually selling? What is the messaging change, right? And then you have to also get that to your reps and make sure that they're applying it day to day, and that that's not easy. So you know people are quick to blame the managers, and I think there is something to be had in being able to coach them, but I do think there's like a fundamental problem with just how some of these sales orgs are structured in the first place. It starts with the top always, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bigger go-to-market problem, and I see that too in some orders. When you got product and marketing touting about we got this feature, that feature, this other feature, and people are going to love it, and that's all we're arming people with. No wonder they show up and throw up all over the people. But
Right,
I always say, hey, here's what I really need to know about the new product or new module or new whatever. Who
right,
the hell buys this crap? Right? Who should I be calling? What
right,
titles and what industries? What
right,
situations do they need to be in? Because not everybody is in the situation to buy, right? What are some of the core, just 3 to 5 problems that we really solve with this product? If I could find that person in this situation with one of those problems, I got the beginning of a qualified lead. And the last piece I need, whether you're doing business development or sales, I pray to God I'm not the first sucker selling this, am I? For other people that have bought it, what have been the outcomes, the results, the value they've gotten? So I can use that in stories like, hey, we've been talking to other CIOs like yourself that are dealing with this problem. And for the ones that we've worked with, we've seen these results. I'm curious, are you having a similar problem? It's that type of armament where it's actionable for sales, not just, hey, here's 1,000 things the product does and you expect me to translate.
right, right.
So I can in the product. So it sounds like it's not just helping me practice this conversation, right? Because it is a conversation, like with I'm like literally like I'm picking up the phone or getting on a Zoom call and I'm talking to someone. Um, can it also help me practice the pitch or what questions I should be asking to help set up the qualification or the demo for the product?
Absolutely. So the way our customers use the product is very simple, actually. It just boils down to three main steps, right? One, they go in and they build the personas that they usually target. This is what the manager might do or the enablement team might do. They'll go upload their persona documentation and boom, you've got all your personas,
So,
right? And then
quick question: how hard is it to build
yeah,
a? Because I get some clients that go, Carlos, you don't understand. We're in a unique space. Our
right,
buyers are different. So, like,
right,
if I'm selling to utilities, or I'm selling to financial services, or I'm
sure.
selling into manufacturing, how hard is it to set up the persona that really has their characteristics?
So that's the big unlock with the technology right now, Carlos, is it takes around 3 minutes to build one of those bots.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not the case a year ago. When we first started the company, it took 48 hours to build the bot. So people would give us all their documentation and we would just give them one or two bots, right? And that would take us like a 48-hour turnaround time. And we were manually building these and really putting a lot of detail and work into it. Now we've automated that process down completely to the point where our customers are just building their own bots on the platform, right? It takes 3 minutes. Once you become an expert, you can flip them out even faster than that. And some customers have 500, 600, 700 bots on the platform, covering every possible scenario that the reps run into. Right. And you can imagine once you get to like a platform product, like an enterprise that's selling maybe 50, 60, 70 different products, now those scenarios multiply. And so it's got to be a short period of time to build a bot. Otherwise, people are just not going to use it. So that's one of the first things we solve for.
How often does it update? Like when we think the problems are today and what our key differentiators are today,
Sure.
6 months from now, pivot.
Yeah. And that's part of why we even built the solution in the first place, right? Because these things change. It's never constant. And there's always like a retraining aspect. There's always a recertification aspect. So yeah, it depends on the industry. So, we have customers where things are changing on every 2 weeks because their product team is just shipping so fast. Or we also have talked to customers where things are changing quarterly, right? For example, if you talk about staffing, right? They have seasonal changes every quarter, right? And they have to equip their reps to have different types of conversations based on those seasonal changes. Same thing in the medical field as well. There's like seasonal changes all the time, right? There's certain periods of time. Maybe in the summer, people buy more than in the winter, right? And so it really depends on the industry. But in the world of B2B SaaS, Carlos, the way these companies ship, it's like things are always changing,
Changing.
and especially when you have a complex platform product, you're bound to have change like literally every day. So otherwise,
So I,
companies aren't
I, I
moving.
cut you off. You said there's three fronts. One was setting up the personas. What were the
Yes.
other two?
Yeah, sure. So the other front is, so you set up the persona. Well, your rep's going to do the role play. Now, how do you actually evaluate how well the rep did? Right. The whole point of our platform as a manager shouldn't have to go in and listen to that role play to figure out how well a rep did. Rather, our AI can actually score how well that rep did automatically. So the second step essentially is building out a scorecard, right? That can actually evaluate how well the rep did based on what good looks like for your company, right? So that could look like a sales methodology, like maybe you use MedPick, right? So you set up a MedPick scorecard on our platform and it will tell you how well the rep adhered to MedPick while doing that role play, right? So that's step two. And then step three really is just setting up reporting and analytics on the platform. Because at the end of the day, this is a platform where managers get to figure out what are the skill gaps for my reps and how do I actually know where to coach even further. Right. And so we want to make it fully customized for them to be able to go in and say, like, at a bird's eye view, okay, my SMB team struggles at X skills, right? Or they struggle with X products. So next time I have a one-on-one with that rep on that team, I'm going to be prepared rather than going in blind, which is what a lot of managers do today on their one-on-ones.
Is there an aspect of this? Like, do we have to? Uh, where do you train it? Like on what product I'm really selling? Right? Am I selling a sales training framework to a VP of sales, or am I selling security to a CTO or chief security officer?
Yeah, so we actually support a wide variety of personas, Carlos. We're pretty industry agnostic in general. Like, we have customers that sell medical devices. We have customers that sell, like physical therapy licenses, right? We have customers that sell like, classic like B2B SaaS products or, professional services, cybersecurity. So we dabble in quite a few different spaces. I mentioned staffing earlier as well. And the nice part is the bots are pretty well rounded. So any persona you can think of, there's a pretty high chance it will be able to personify that job title pretty well. I haven't honestly, in all the time that I've been working with customers, I haven't seen a job title not work on Hyperbound.
Okay.
It just speaks to how widely trained our models are. Yeah.
Is there an assessment side? So like you can kind of go, hey, it's a senior rep. I still want you to go to this program, but it'll assess you and you're going to do these practices versus, hey, it's a
Mhm.
junior rep and you're going to do these practices. Is that part of it?
Yeah, so one portion of the product is the practice and the role plays, right? And then the question is, are the reps actually applying that in real life, right? It's the reinforcement piece that's equally important. So we actually have a second product that we sell now, which basically listens to your real calls as well, the ones that are happening in the field, and then we'll score those as well and evaluate, okay, here's what the top performers are doing, here's what the bottom performers are doing. What is the gap between them? And it will actually recommend role plays to both of those personas based on their skill gaps where they're struggling, right?
Nice.
So it's what a manager should be doing. A manager should theoretically be listening to all these calls, right? Coming up with a strategy to make sure that every rep feels comfortable. But obviously, it's not reasonable to expect a human to go listen to like hundreds of calls every week. But our AI does not get tired of listening to calls. It will listen to calls 24/7. And so that's the difference.
I like it. How I haven't used your product, so I'm just curious. How realistic is it?
Yeah.
It's it. Or am I going to say, "Hey, what's your number one business priority?" And they go, "Blah blah 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 blah." Or do they give me
Yeah.
a real answer like, "Well, we're just trying to grow sales"?
Right, right. Yeah, actually that's a great question. And that's been a big focus for us, Carlos, from day one, because I say this all the time. If the role play is not real, um, nobody's going to use it. It feels like a gimmick. It just feels like I'm just in a game, a simulation. I might do like once or twice and I'm never going to use it again. Right. And that was actually the state of the technology before. There's actually a lot of legacy companies that tried to do this like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They're still around, but the reason they didn't take off is because they weren't real. Right. So we've spent a lot of R&D, millions of dollars and time into making sure that the role plays are as realistic and human like as possible. In fact, that's what my co-founder and I spent the last decade doing, like researching how to get these models to behave as human like as possible. So even in a scenario like you just described, right, our AI will automatically behave the way that person is expected to behave. So if it's like a CEO or a C-suite leader, it's going to be a lot more guarded, right? If it's like
Right.
C, it will be less guarded, right? If it's put on, like, we have different modes, so we have rude mode, we have kind mode, we have like different personalities to the bot. If it's on rude mode, which is the hardest, it's not going to give you much, right? But the nice mode will be way more talkative, way more willing to give you information. So all of these things are tunable on the platform.
All right. All right. So don't hate me, but the proof's in the pudding. You know how it is with new tech. It comes out. We love it. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yep.
Oh, we're busy. We're not using it. It fell on the wayside. What are you seeing? Obviously, you want to promote continual learning. So, what are you seeing as far as usage and people continuing the practice with the tool throughout, with your customers?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And it really comes down to the use cases, right? I'll give you an example of a use case that is just evergreen all the time. And our reps love this feature. Personally, I use it literally every day because I'm on high stakes calls all day. But the idea is, like, imagine you have a big call with a decision maker coming up tomorrow, right? Maybe you're talking to like a C suite leader. Imagine if you not only just do your pre-call prep like you usually might do, but you could actually build a clone of that person before that call, practice with it, right, and feel confident that you can handle every possible scenario that you might run into with that person, right? Like, I do that all the time. Like, sometimes maybe we would have spent like 5-6 months just to get this decision maker on, the CRO, to finally come to the meeting. I don't want to mess it up, right? So I'll go into Hyperbound, build a bot, and just practice and make sure I get all my marbles out of the mouth, right?
Yeah, I think
So
that's awesome.
that's an amazing use case. In fact, one of our customers in the early days, they had they were about to talk to a C-suite leader at Nike, right? And he was super nervous for it. He went on to Hyperbound, built a bot, practiced with it, and he took the call, aced it, and he came back to us and he was like, guys, legitimately, if I had not built that bot, I would have completely faltered on that call, right? He was like so glad he did that. And I think that was one of the waking moments for us. We realized, like, dang, this is like a big deal, you know?
Yeah, that was John Wooden had a saying about you got to practice like you play, or
Mm-hmm.
he's also the one that says it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect. So I
Absolutely.
love that because the biggest deals I've been involved with, I've pulled the team together, we've created a war room in preparing for the meeting. But one of the things we couldn't automate was let's practice the conversation, right? So I
Yeah.
think I think you're on to something there. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, it's and that wasn't even a use case that I realized in the early days. Like, that was something our customers brought to light. And after that, I was doing that every day as well. And I'm like, dang, why did I not do this before? What's interesting, Carlos? Our bots, they can even clone real people's voices. So, if I had voice clips of you, I could actually upload it to the bot, clone your voice, and make it feel even more real, just like you.
That's cool because especially sometimes the executives, one of the places I look is on YouTube to see if, which I did on you, by the way. It's like, hey, what other podcasts or things have you and your co-founder
Right.
done? And that gives a way to kind of get an idea of your personality and what you're talking about. And it's an easy way to get spoon fed, a comfort level with someone that you've never, sat down and had a conversation with yet. So I'm better prepared. So that's a great idea. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about yourself. You're obviously and don't take this the wrong way. You're a young professional, which is amazing given everything you've done.
Yeah.
So, can you give us a little background on you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So a little bit of background on me. I'm a conversational AI engineer. And you're probably wondering, what the hell is a conversational AI engineer? Basically, my co-founder and I spent the last decade figuring out how to get these AI models, particularly the generative AI models that you see today, how to get them to be as human-like and realistic as possible. Right. In fact, my co-founder used to work on some of the precursor models to ChatGPT. And it's funny because everyone talks about GPT like it's this brand new thing that just came out of thin air. But believe it or not, there were a lot of versions that came before it that have been around for 10 years, right?
Wow.
People just didn't know about them because they weren't as good as they are today. And so that's what we did. And I've been coding since I was like in fourth, fifth grade. I come from a family of coders. Grew up in the Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley, um, and yeah, I found my co-founder through high school. Believe it or not, we actually met in choir back then, and
Wow.
yeah, and you wouldn't guess that we would ever do a startup together. I mean, we were both ambitious people. Always, that was a part of our personality. But it didn't really occur to us that we could be doing what we're doing today until nearly 10 years later, once we graduated college. I was a founding engineer at another startup. He was working at Meta. And, after I kind of got the taste of entrepreneurship from that startup, I was like, Athol, you want to join me in doing my own thing? And he was like, in a heartbeat. He said yes in 3 seconds after I asked him,
Wow.
and then
I
he
think it's
quit his
awesome.
full-time job to join and just do the startup together. So that's kind of been our journey. It all happened very quickly. I graduated from college in 2022, so I'm about 3 years out of college, worked for a year out of college, and then started this company. So yeah,
That's an
things
amazing story.
things are
And you're
early,
building
but it's exciting.
you're building something, not just a product for people to think about. You're building careers for people. You help support families. So I always think we should really praise the entrepreneurs in this world. They're the ones that create growth. From nothing, you created growth. You created jobs for in supporting families. Great job. Um, Last two questions. What's your 1% edge? What are you working on these days to get 1% better every day?
Love that question. It's a very introspective question because, I'm constantly thinking about that every single day. Like, obviously balancing a million different things at any given moment, but it's like, what can I do to be a better operator, a better leader, but also be a better IC day to day? Because a lot of the work that I do, it's just execution too. Like I'm an SDR every single day, right? I'm an AE every day. I'm a CSM. I'm an AM. I'm doing everything, right? I'm also working with the engineering team. I'm working on product, a lot of different things. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I can do for myself to get 1% better every day is really just being able to communicate my thoughts as clearly as possible, right? Because when there's so much going on, you can't expect everyone to keep up with that. So as a leader, it's all about how do I make sure I can keep up with that and communicate what's going on to the rest of the company, right? So whether that might be like from an investment perspective, like I'm talking to tons of investors right now, and it's like, you know, I want to cut through all that noise and just give everyone like, hey, here's what I'm hearing, right? Here's what you can expect. And here's where we're headed, and here's our long-term vision. So those are the types of things that I'm trying to improve personally. Is like, how do I take all the garbled mess in my head that I have to deal with every day, and make it as clear and concise as possible for the rest of our employees, so that everyone is on the same page. And it's not easy. It's something that I still struggle with every single day, but I'm learning every day.
Yeah, I mean, uh, when I did the podcast, the whole thing was kind of thinking about, excellence or being great at something is not a destination; it's a
Mhm.
constant journey. Just because you mentioned Steph Curry, he's not sitting at home going, "Well, I guess I'm done. I've hit all the records. I'm good. I've won a
Right,
championship. I've won a few of
right,
them." It's like, no, no, what's next, right? How do I get even better? How
right,
do I get even better given this year's situation versus last year? So,
right.
you got a growth mindset, my friend, and that's awesome. And
And
you
I
want
was
to
going
try
to
to,
mention that that's literally the word that came to mind for me as well, Carlos, is that, you know, I think the only way as a founder to survive this journey is you have to be willing to take on whatever role comes your way, right? Like when I first started, I was coding the entire product. My co-founder and I built V0 of Hyperbound. Then we hired our first engineer because we just, couldn't handle the amount of inbound that we were getting at the time. So I went full-time sales, right? And so was my co-founder. We were both just doing sales all day long. Eventually, my co-founder now does customer success because we have customers now, and
Yep.
I've had to take over a lot of the stuff that he was doing, and now we're building out an SDR team, and we're building out an AE team, and it's like, how do I transfer all that knowledge to all these people? And so that way, eventually, I'm going to fire myself from that role, hand it over, and move on to the next thing. And that's always been the goal. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Saif, if somebody wants to get to know you better, reach out, or get to know your company better and learn more about your products, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is honestly LinkedIn. Sriharsha Guduguntla is all you got to search up. You can also visit hyperbound AI, and there's actually a free demo that's available on our website. We have 9 free bots that are publicly available. You can do a cold call, you can do a discovery call, you can do a warm call. So there's all types of role plays you can try out. So I would highly recommend doing those. You don't even need to sign up. Don't need to make an account. It's completely free. And then if you do want to talk ever, feel free to reach out to us at founders@hyperbound.ai. That's going to be the easiest way.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Carlos.
All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. If you found it valuable, please comment back, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. It makes us better. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success.